RC Fischer pre-draft. What a treat.
Awesome. Awesome to be here pre-draft.
You're ready for the draft? You have all your prospect evaluations dialed in?
I'm like a Matt Foley of the NFL draft. I've been locked in a basement, drinking coffee and watching tape and doing analytics down to guys that play for Mount Union and James Madison and West Florida. It's been quite a week as
So
we
we're going
hit
to
the
get some
stretch
sleeper
run.
talk with you today. We're going to get some
We're going to get
big-time
some
draft
sleeper
sleeper
talks.
talk.
I'm going to try to lay a couple on you.
Good.
I'm
And
going to try
maybe
to stump,
some
stump the Podfather with a sleeper that you may have never heard of.
stump me.
Yeah.
Stump me, RC. I want to be stumped. Please, for the love of God, stump the hell out of me. Please stump me. I want to be stumped. And I mean, I was baffled last time. I was absolutely baffled when I asked you for, a bold prediction, and you talked about Rachaad White outscoring Bijan Robinson in fantasy football straight up, right? Straight up. No handicap, right? Just straight up. Rachaad White outscores Bijan Robinson. You said it. And then we clipped it, right? We clipped it. Now, some hosts don't clip hot takes because they're afraid that the guest will then regret that they said the hot take and it gets taken out of context. And then people on Twitter, X will be, in their mentions, and then they won't come back. And so there's a sensitivity, right? And so my video team came back to me and they said, we really like this particular quote from RC Fischer about Rachaad White scoring more fantasy points than Bijan Robinson, and people just have to eat that. And I said, for some guests, I would say no, let's not run that because it's just too hot. They might get a little, uncomfortable, right? Their butt cheeks get tight, RC. See, their butt cheeks get tight when that goes on social media. But I didn't even call you. I didn't even email you. I didn't even ask. I said, go with it. If he says it, that's his feeling. He's not trying to, be provocative. This is what he thinks. This is, and it's well reasoned, and I'm sure he would stand by it. Green light, put it on the board, right? Quote that shit, put it on the board, cut it up, put it on the board, and we did. And I got close to 1 million views on TikTok. People were outraged. They thought that
Yes.
you were
a million out of 1 million were outraged.
Many were outraged. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I was like, this is amazing. And then people were like, wait, are you sure? This is getting hot. You sure RC is going to be okay with this? I'm like, you kidding me? He's loving this. He's loving this. This is his receipt now. He has a receipt. And then sure enough, bang! There it goes. Rachaad White did. In fact, for the record, Rachaad White did outscore Bijan Robinson, and it made me so happy. It was my happiest moment of the season, was looking up at the board and seeing Rachaad White and Bijan Robinson right below him. And I was like, that's just so poetic. So good, man.
And people on my team wanted to strike back against the million people that were against that as the tide started to turn. Because Rachaad's first week of the season, I was like, oh no, please, this is not the uses. This is what I was not looking for. But then as Rachaad started to pull past Bijan, my guys were like, we got to fire back. There's a Twitter site or whatever that clips hot takes and then blasts them and all that. Well, they took it down. Like, you cheat bastards. If you're going to kill me for a take, I mean, and they commented on it like, who is this guy thinking? What an idiot. This is going to come back to bite him. But then they took it down. I'm like, at least have the courage to leave it up there and take a hit. So my guys wanted to go hit them back. I'm like, you're never going to win. You put that clip up there. It got 1 million views. It got all kinds of negative feedback. people going out of their way to find me to tell me how stupid it was, which is fine. That's how I live my football life for the last 10 plus years. It's really does not bother me a bit. I eat it for breakfast. It's an energy source. So you can use any clip, you can use anything that I say, even if it's a face plant, in when it ends. But the funny part about that is, or the sad part, when something like that hits, you would think that some portion of a million people would turn back around and go, geez, great call. I just wanted to reach out. I called you a this, that, and the other thing, and I told you you should do this sexual thing to yourself and to others and to barnyard animals and all of that, all for a football take. And like, there is 0.0% of people come back and say, geez, I was wrong. This guy was right. Sorry about that. So and I'm not in the hot take business because there's no value in it. It doesn't gain me any more support because everybody thinks I'm a complete raving idiot. And then they don't come back after the fact and go, geez, that guy was right. Maybe we should check out what he's doing or take some of his information in. Nope. It's just, you go against the religion of what the mainstream says, and you must have your head lopped off.
Well,
and then moving on. If they were wrong, they're just moving on to the next one.
Yeah, they're on to the next attack, right? And the beauty is there's the account Fantasy Receipts, right? The irony
I think that was the one. Yeah,
right. There's the irony is it's Fantasy Receipts. Your whole existence is, hey, we have a snapshot that is forever of this bad take or this bad position. So when they criticize a position before the season even starts, right, and then delete it, what about the receipt? You just delete it. You're lighting receipts on fire. Of all of the services in this world, the one that I would think would be here storing and maintaining all the receipts from everybody. Yes. Great service. Thank you for doing that. We're so glad that you're keeping an archive of all these things. Oh, with the exception of your dumb knee-jerk reaction, right? Your faux outrage at what was a very reasonable position, right? It was also, the thing is, what gets lost in all this is this wasn't just a random lucky guess, okay? This was based on the fact that this guy had the backfield all to himself, even more than Bijan did. That there was as much, if not more, firepower in that offense than what Atlanta had, right? That Bijan Robinson proved to be a better receiver than we thought he was, and yet he still couldn't catch Rachaad White in total fantasy points in PPR leagues because Rachaad White's that good of a receiver. So it was based on the larger position that Rachaad White's the most undervalued asset in fantasy football drafts that we've seen in 5 years. Right? I think I talked about, when you think about who he is and what his abilities are, what his skill set is, that it was really a flashback to 10 years earlier to Jamal Charles. Right? And Jamal Charles in the 5th round, 6th round was the impetus for the 0 RB theory, original manifesto from Sean Siegel. And this was the second coming. This was clearly and obviously, to many people, you, us at Player Profiler, and others who focus on the right details, it was clear and obvious. And so this wasn't just a lucky guess. That's the thing I want to make sure I get across. This was incredibly well-reasoned, which is why we're just like, yeah, we're just going to post it. And then the fact that the receipts shop was found in the back burning receipts is just the best, dude.
That's my favorite. That should have been the take of the year. them burning the take of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. Trust us. Trust us with your receipts. We're going to keep them safe. Nothing's going to happen to these takes. These takes are forever in our vault. We'll never destroy a take. It's forever. Into perpetuity. Takes. Right? Except this one where we were really dumb and we can't justify it. And then the thing is, though, the beauty is this is months later. This is someone who was thinking, you were so in the head of fantasy receipts. It was just a shameful, underbelly, parasite of the fantasy football industry, right? That's who it is. Shameful parasite living in the underbelly of the industry. And clearly you were in the head of the parasite. Like the parasites are now afraid of you. They're never going to clip another thing that you say ever again.
They will when it's
and months and months later,
be wrong.
You've probably forgotten. Like you'd moved on. That's the beauty of it. I know you. Like you were just like, yeah, this is my position. This is what it is, and I'm not going to think about it again. Like you guys can think whatever you want. This guy, this fantasy receipts anonymous coward, is thinking about it every day, and he is like tracking their fantasy points. And you could just see the look in his face like, oh, my God, right? Because that's the thing. If you want to be in the take game, then be in the take game. We're in the take game, right? And we will celebrate the hits and we will mourn the losses, right? But if you're in the receipts game, then you need to be an independent arbiter. You just need to be the bank of takes. And if you want to get into the take game, fine, then be in the take game. But you can't be in the, in the business world, and you can't be running businesses, but then also loaning yourself money. Okay, you're either the bank of receipts of the takes, or you're doing your own takes. But when you cross over, right, and you break the veil, then it should be over. Like that event should have been the cataclysmic event that forced the takedown and the complete annihilation of that account
and dismissal by the public who follows it. Should have been an uprising about it, but obviously it just disappeared. And they took a hit at my credibility, which is fine. But then to take it away, to make it like it never was, that probably hurt 10 times as much, because it could have been a nice moment for us, but they took that away. It's like they double slandered, they double hit my credibility. So it's the way it's going to go. Nobody's going to remember the Rachaad White take but me and you for years to come.
Oh, there's a lot of people in the live chat that are never going to forget. They're never going to forget. And we're never going to forget. I mean, you won an award. Player Profiler Awards, best take of the year, winner, RC Fischer. Like, we're not going to let it go, man. We're not going to let it go. And we will demand the dissolution, right, of this account. Like, this account, we will petition Twitter. We can petition the government, right, the FCC, whoever it takes, whoever's in charge of these things. Like, this account needs to be liquidated forever, lost all credibility, and should be ashamed and apologize, right? And that should be it. Like, the account is shelved pending an apology, right? The account is unavailable to anyone pending an apology. That's what should happen.
They could clip the first part of this show, play it, and issue it as part of their apology, and then we're a couple of steps towards reconciliation, towards allowing them to exist.
Yeah, it should cease to exist pending an apology. Thank you, RC. Thank you for what you do. You're the great exposer, man. Like, you're the great exposer of the poser. RC Fischer, that's what he is. I should put that in the official sort of
I smell show title.
I could put it in the show title. I could talk about it in the the beginning of the show, right? So I think we're gonna have to fire this show up. You know what I mean? I think we're gonna have to. I think you know the drill, right? You know how we fire the show up.
Yep.
And we have to do an official introduction for RC Fischer. Has to be the exposer of the posers. And we're going to be digging into many of these NFL draft prospects. I don't know. I don't know if there's anyone out there, especially in the fantasy football space, that does as much research as you. So to have you on right now at this time, we're a week away from the NFL draft, is such a treat. And I have a lot of questions, man. And you have the answers.
I appreciate the invite, as always, to be on, and let's talk about it.
Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program, the exposer of the posers. That's right, from fantasyfootballmetrics.com, friend of the show and winner of the best take of 2023. Here with me today, it is RC Fischer.
So glad for that intro. So glad to be back. So glad to be with you before the draft and not after the draft, which is our usual flow. So this is going to be exciting.
So we talked about Rachaad White earlier in the pre-show, and I guess the question is, what do you expect from Rachaad White this year? He's our guy.
The funny thing about Rachaad White having such a great year last year, I think he was underutilized. I think there's way more upside to come, and I'm not saying that because I'm a Rachaad White guy. Most weeks that I watched the tape back of Tampa Bay games, I was frustrated beyond all belief at what Todd Bowles and Dave Canales was doing. It was Todd Bowles making Dave Canales do it. To keep Rachaad White running up the middle, and Todd Bowles coming out in press conferences saying that Rachaad White needs to not dance around and look for holes, when I think he's like a Le'Veon Bell 2.0. He can slip and slide around and find holes. They wanted him to just get the ball and run up the middle and run the clock and wear the defense down. In the beginning of the season, they weren't really using him as a receiving weapon. And it's almost like they found out by mistake that they've got this guy that I argued last year has the best hands maybe of any running back in the NFL, right up there with Christian McCaffrey, that he's going to be such a receiving weapon. It's going to lead to him being an RB1 because of his pass catching ability. And still throughout the season, you saw how many times he'd take a little dump pass and just turned it into a 50-yard touchdown. Most of those plays that he did that, he was getting the ball by mistake. He was like the third option, check down, I'm in trouble. They didn't really have plays set up for him to make him a weapon. I think this year that could be the thing that they install with the new offensive coordinator and another year under Rachaad White's belt, is making him an actual weapon in the passing game, not a default or an emergency throw. And if that happens, we're going to see huge PPR numbers.
Yeah, I mean, last year, he put up big numbers, okay? In terms of fantasy points per game, he was number 10. But in terms of overall fantasy points, because he was healthy all year, he was the RB4. But he only caught 64. He had 50 catches the year before. I mean, what? Right? Sharing a backfield with Leonard Fournette, you thought if all the targets go his way, then he could get 100 catches. But no, actually what happened was they gave him the backfield, but they didn't throw to running backs nearly as much. Right? Here's the backfield, but we're not going to throw to running backs like we did last year. Okay, I guess. Right? That opens up a lot of upside where he could get to 20 fantasy points per game if they decide to make him a featured weapon out of the backfield in the passing game. And now that he's been established, right? And the thing is, what was interesting that you mentioned, he was pushing 300 carries, right? Given his skill set, where he ranked in terms of carries versus where he ranked in terms of targets was backwards. He was number 2 in the NFL in carries, number 9 in targets. He should have been number 2 in targets among running backs and number 9 in carries. If it flips, then the weighted opportunities goes up. He had 273.1 weighted opportunities, which puts it an additional premium on targets because targets generate more fantasy points than carries. And so what weighted opportunities does is it adjusts for the total opportunities by the fantasy point scoring potential of those opportunities. So if you flip those, then his weighted opportunities would be over 300. And it's very easy to see with a new offensive coordinator, a new system, new philosophy, or just the general organizational realization of what he is and what he can do, that A, there's no incentive to draft a running back now that they know they have a bell cow who's 25 years old. If they're going to draft a running back, it's going to be pure depth in day 3. So, okay, you know that, right? They're going to continue to invest in the offensive line. The offensive line cratered the last couple of years, and they're now rebuilding it. But they have assets to rebuild around, like Tristan Wirfs. So the idea that you could get him in best ball and underdog, he's at the 4-5 turn. He's at the 4-5 turn. Now knowing what his role is going to be and having been established as a true workhorse for a full season, I think that the 4-5 turn ADP for Rachaad White is actually a better value, given the information we now have, than his late 6th, early 7th round ADP from last year. Yep. Last year it was crazy. It was cartoonish, right? We said all we're going to do is 0 RB and get Rachaad White every time. That was the strategy, right? We shared that. And it was just the egregious mispricing of a player in fantasy football. But now that everybody knows what he is, for him to be at the 4-5 turn is in some ways more egregious.
Yeah, as established as he is, bringing back all of the same, bringing back the quarterback, head coach is the same, but a new offensive coordinator, there's room to grow. If worst case, he just has a repeat of last year, he's going to be fine. He's going to give you the proper, good, great ROI. But if they make an adjustment and they let him start to run the ball with more freedom, and I swear that guy got stopped at the 1-yard line about half a dozen times on either goal line attempts or just catching one of his passes and running it 40 yards, he was 40 yards away and he got 39 and got tripped up from behind and fell at the 1. Then Tampa Bay often then threw the ball, or Baker would run it for some reason and not give it to Rachaad White. Rachaad White could have had double the touchdowns last year, and he could have had 50% plus more catches. The upside potential here is insane. The downside
his
is
touchdown
last
rate,
year.
RC, his touchdown rate, and the touchdown rate goes up for players that are used on the goal line because of ball security. So here's the thing. He's got great speed. Okay, he runs a 4.48, so sub 4.5 speed and ball security. If you have breakaway speed and ball security, that's the ultimate formula for getting double-digit touchdowns. He didn't get to double-digit touchdowns last year. He only had 9. But given all the carries, it was a complete outlier. 2.7% touchdown rate is minuscule.
And it's not because he's a problem around the goal line. It was that's a terrible run blocking offensive line. Really good setup designed for pass blocking, especially with the way that they want to throw the ball down the field, but very poor 2 years running run blocking. If they snag one of these top offensive tackles or grab a guard every time they add to this offensive line, it's another deposit in Rachaad's bank of what's to come on the ground.
My strategy this year is hero RB, get one in the first round or the fourth round. Right? Because in the fourth round, you got Etienne, you got Rachaad White. And then in the first round, you've got Piarsall and you've got Bijan Robinson. So this year, are you putting Bijan ahead of Rachaad White, or are you back saying, no, Rachaad White's going to outscore Bijan again?
I have them pretty close. I think the switch in the offense in Atlanta now could favor Bijan having a nice, getting all the targets and getting all the touches that I want Rachaad White to have. So I have them pretty close. It's not as bombastic to say that I think Rashaad's going to defeat Bijan, but I think they're right there. They're both legit.
Well, he's not going to. I'm telling you he's not going to, because I was not ready for Bijan Robinson to catch 58. That was crazy. Right? He was not a prolific pass catcher at Texas. Hey, prove it to me. Right? 50% snap share. Like it was essentially a 50-50 rotation with Tyler Algier, and he's still catching 58 passes in a low volume offense. Now you put a proper pocket passer back there. You turn up the pass volume, and you know that throughout camp, it's just going to be a process of him chipping away at Tyler Algier's role, so that by the time week one rolls around, he's going to be so undeniable.
And the key is the Falcons' offensive line is one of the best in the league, set up for the run game, but also good in pass protection. They're way better than what Rachaad White's got to run behind. So,
yeah, I mean, he's looking the part of like a 101 in fantasy, and the reason why I'm happy to draft him, because you can get him at the 6th pick, the 7th pick, the 8th pick in the first round. Sometimes he's there on Underdog. So, and that's what I'm looking at right now. Underdog is where people are drafting, and they have these, the idea that there would be big money best ball tournaments at this level available in April, a couple of years ago, would have been unthinkable. But Underdog is doing it, and so we're very fortunate to have partnered with them. The promo code is Underworld on Underdog, Underworld to get a 100% instant deposit match on Underdog up to $100. We'll talk more about Underdog later, but yep, this is the year. I think we've even talked about this, right? That yes, Bijan is nice and he's fun, but we need to see how he's used as a receiver in year one. Let's see it, and then we can evaluate. And now he's going at the same draft slot, and now we have all this new information, right? So now, while I'm totally avoiding Bijan last year because I need more information before I'm going to use a first-round pick on a guy that wasn't a prolific receiver in college and is not operating in what you would call, an elite offense. Now the offense is guaranteed to be prolific, and he proved that he can be a high-volume receiver. So all the questions are answered. It's all systems go. It's all green lights. So this is the situation where, okay, there's a running back that you could feel comfortable drafting, even in a best ball league, even one where that you draft and have to start 3 receivers. Typically, you're going receiver in the first round, but this is the rare season where you have 3 running backs. Right now, you go back to last year, there were more than 3 running backs going in the first round. McCaffrey was going in the first round. Bijan was going in the first round. Eckler was going in the first round. Saquon was going in the first round. But I wasn't drafting most of those guys in the first round. I was like, no, this is the year to draft receiver in the first round. Now, this year, it's pretty extraordinary that you would have 3 running backs. Do you agree with McCaffrey, Bijan, and Piarsall being 3 running backs you would feel very comfortable in all formats drafting in the first round?
Yeah, first round wise, I would be all over that. And as the tide shifts, before it was everybody, it was 9 running backs in the first round, and then some wide receivers sprinkled in there. Used to be the way fantasy would go, and we all started to shift to, leaning into the ROI, the great hidden value, so to speak, of the wide receivers early. Now it looks like the fantasy world is catching up to that, and they're going in on the wide receivers. So there's almost an inclination that now the running backs have value, that people are starting to abandon the early running back and chase the early wide receiver. I were ahead of that curve. Now the curve is switching and probably going running backs in the face of it, especially with those three guys that are almost guarantees. They are almost guaranteed, aside from injury, obviously, they are guaranteed money. Like I love Rachaad White, and he could beat all three of them, but he is not getting. We have not seen evidence that he's treated like Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, and Christian McCaffrey by his own team, by his own coaches. It's possible, but we know with the other guys, they're locked in.
Yeah, it's on.
They can't miss.
It's totally on. It's totally on. And people are like, well, if you look at best ball leagues like Underdog, Bryce Hall is going at the 7th pick, right? Of course these guys are first-round picks. Of course. Yeah, we know a lot of running backs historically have gone in the first round, and usually we're saying don't draft them. Please, for the love of God, don't draft these running backs. Get out of here, right? You can get a running back later. Go hero RB, draft a running back in round 4, 0 RB, draft Rachaad White, whatever, right? So there might be 5, 6, 7 running backs going in the first round. And we were saying, if it's not McCaffrey, no thank you. Right? So, again, these were uncommon positions to take in previous years. That's why it's now interesting that two people that were hammering for years, wide receiver early, last few years, are back to saying, actually, we're in on 3 different running backs in the first round. That's probably not going to be the case next year or the year after that. It's just this one year. There's this one moment in time where you've got super studs, 3 super stud running backs. And as good as Rachaad White is, you're right. I can't argue that he's going to get to their level. I just can't do it. I can't do it. But am I very happy? Am I ecstatic that you can get him in pretty much every draft in the 4th round? Rachaad White, 4th round every time? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what about Etienne, though? Etienne in the 4th round as well?
I'm cool on Etienne, always have been. He's not my favorite guy. I'd rather stretch for others, but I'm not radically against him, but I'm not excitedly pursuing him.
But aren't you excited about the fact that Tank Bigsby has the 3rd round capital? They whiffed, and I just can't see this organization doing it again. They're like, hey, we have our between the tackles runner who has just some of the worst league ball security there is, but we're going to roll with him as the backup because hell, if we're going to, throw good money after bad, we have an established bell cow just like Tampa does in Travis Etienne. It's just the funny thing is Etienne was the 1st round pick. Rachaad White was the 3rd round pick, and yet it's now flipped where Etienne is a lesser version of Rachaad White in every way. Like, what is Rachaad White good at? Long runs. Well, Etienne can do that too. Etienne has the speed. What's Rachaad White excels in the passing game? Well, Etienne does that too, except just not as good. Right? Hands not as good. Route running not as good. Breakaway speed not as good. He's just not quite as good, and yet he was drafted earlier, and that's the whole ball game. Right? Where he was drafted is the reason why he's going 10 slots earlier on Underdog. So you look at the ADPs, that draft capital for what now is football ancient history. I mean, you've got to deploy archaeologists to go dig up that draft at this point, right? And that is still the thing that is like driving people to select Etienne. Most people that are going running back are going to go Etienne over Rachaad White in a best ball draft. And that's just not right. right? The only reason that you would have Etienne is because you're managing your portfolio, right? You're saying, I have done this many drafts, and in a lot when I don't get a running back in the first round, I'm circling the fourth round as my running back round for my hero RB, and in those instances, sure, 60+% of the time I'm going to draft Rachaad White, but then say 20% of the time, just to balance it out, I'm going to go with Travis Etienne. It's just portfolio management at that point, because you don't necessarily want to be too overexposed, because anything can happen. The whole premise behind generally fading first-round running backs is that their fragility year to year is higher than wide receivers. And especially in a format like Underdog that rewards receivers with more starting slots, start 3 receivers versus start 2 running backs, then it compounds the fragility problem. And it's not just a health fragility problem. Yes, the injury rate on running backs is higher, but also the projection failure rate on running backs is higher. So any given projection, whether it be the best projectors in the world, Sean Corner, others, Billy Muzio, you take the best projections out there, they're going to more often fail with running backs. Running backs are just harder to project, generally speaking, than wide receivers. So for all those reasons, drafting a running back in the first round is just a risky proposition. You need to have absolutely mind-melting upside to justify it, and you're getting that with McCaffrey, Hall, and Robinson. Right? That's the beauty of it. But that's also why, knowing the fragility of running back projections year to year, you can't just draft Rachaad White every time in the 4th round. Now, it's a little bit different when a guy is going in the 7th round. Right? Then the opportunity cost on what you're giving up, or the risk to your team of a bust in the 7th round, is much lower than busting on a 4th round pick. So that's the reason why last year you could safely go all in on a Rachaad White, whereas this year I would, go, 3-1 Rachaad White versus Etienne shares. And then the other bonus on Etienne is that he is on a better offense.
Two things about this. Love for the running backs, especially in the first round. Not only are these running backs that we're talking about at the top locked in, can't miss. At the same exact time this season, a lot of the top wide receivers that used to be locked in have got totally turned on their ear either last year or this offseason. We don't know what Justin Jefferson's going to do without Kirk Cousins. And I'm not saying he's going to bust or anything, but that was he was a given for a lot of people last year. Cooper Kupp, before his injury, what a high producer. And then Puka comes along and just, kills him. Devontae Adams with the Aaron Rodgers was such an awesome thing, but now you got him with Gardner Minshew. I mean, the top guys at wide receiver are starting to get jumbled up a little bit, where the running backs they're entrenched. Those 3, Bryce, Bijan, and McCaffrey, they are locked in. You don't have to worry about what their coach or their offensive line or anything else, except for Bryce with the offensive line with the Jets. But even they've had a nice offseason building up that offensive line.
And the wide receivers that are going outside the first round, many of them are in stable situations. We talked about Jalen Waddle being my favorite value outside the first round. Stable situation, a lot of upside. Michael Pittman, stable situation, a lot of upside. We'll talk about some of those guys a little bit later. But let's talk about Stephon Diggs first. What are the Bills up to? Why do you think, to you, what do you think they're doing? Why'd they do the trade?
I'm sorry, it's kicked out there for a second. What do I think?
Well, why did the Bills trade Diggs?
Combination of salary. I mean, their salary cap situation is a mess, but I don't know that they got a ton of relief off of the Diggs move, but probably the bigger part of it is Diggs' antics on the sideline. I mean, it's well documented. I'm not, breaking any inside news. You can't have him going nuts on the coaching staff and Josh Allen and all of that, and not get over the hump, not be getting over the hump with him when you could, get close but not win it without him and out without his headaches. So I see them for multiple reasons, but not only just to remove Diggs, maybe it was times like when Antonio Brown got moved out of Pittsburgh, it might be something similar to that. Um, the Bills seem to want to be a copycat version of the Chiefs. I think when they drafted Dalton Kincaid last year, they were trying to this is our Kelsey. By getting rid of Diggs, I think they're looking at the Chiefs and going, look at their wide receiver group. Why are we over invested in wide receivers? Let's just put a good group out there. We got the quarterback. The Chiefs are proving you don't need to have an all-star team at wide receiver. They can be Kelsey led. We've got Kincaid. Let's just try to be like them. Well, I don't know that it's going to work, but they seem to be taking comfort in trying to be the Chiefs on top of Diggs being a potential issue and salary cap problems that they have from Von Miller and on down.
How quickly we forget the narrative around Josh Allen was that Diggs rescued him, right? That the addition of Diggs unlocked Josh Allen. That was the narrative. It's just sports narratives always amuse me. They're player X unlocked player Y, and coach X was critical to the development of player B, and so on. And it's all not true. It's just not. It's not one guy, right? Especially when it's the coach. Do you think they consulted with Josh Allen? Do you think this was a conversation that they had with Josh Allen? Did they called him?
I gotta believe he wanted him out as bad as Sean McDermott did. I mean, it's embarrassing. And one of the things I don't like about Josh Allen is amazing. But one of the NFL things I don't like about Josh Allen is Diggs is ranting and raving. That's where Josh Allen should have just got up and tried to take a swing at him, or it had need to be separated or something. Josh Allen just sitting on the bench looking at his shoes while Stephon Diggs is ranting and raving up and down the sidelines. That's Sean McDermott had to remove Diggs because Josh Allen, to me, wasn't taking him on, wasn't taking a leadership role on the team.
Yeah, it could have been a passive-aggressive maneuver where he later realizes that he was embarrassed and goes to the coaches and says, you got to fix this, right? If you appreciate me and you want to move forward with me long-term, I'm not cool with this. Make a change. Even if that didn't happen, I fundamentally believe that front offices need to involve their star quarterback in these decisions. The star quarterback is so important to the team that if you're a general manager, you need to put together a PowerPoint presentation and you need to go to Patrick Mahomes and say, Pat, here's why we have to trade Tyreek Hill. Here's our plan, right? And actually, as a general manager, it would force you to really think through your process and what your strategy actually is. You know it maybe based on feel that it's the right move, that the Dolphins are overpaying, so we're going to make the move just based on principle. But it also helps you articulate your long-term strategy, and you owe it to your franchise quarterback. If you have a Josh Allen, if you have a Patrick Mahomes. And so when I hear from quarterbacks that these moves, like this would happen with the Patriots, where Tom Brady would admit that he had no idea what was going on, that he had no ability to or say in whether Deion Branch was a Patriot or a Seahawk, right? And I was baffled by that. I was dumbfounded. I was like, what do you mean? Like, first of all, it's a partnership between the players and the teams, right? They share in the revenue, right? This isn't a dictatorship, and these aren't soldiers in the military, right? This is very much a partnership. That's why the coach-player dynamics, I think, are slowly changing over time. to be a little more player centric, where the coaches cater to the players, and it turns out those teams perform better, right,
Look
than
at
the dictator coach teams. Shockingly, wow, big surprise. And when you show deference to the player that's the engine for the whole like success of the franchise, showing that player, just not even necessarily asking that player for constructive feedback, advice, or ideas, just showing deference, just that transparency of involving them in the decision making, or at least giving them a heads up so they're not surprised on vacation when their girlfriend's like, hey, I heard you guys traded your star wide receiver. Did you call him? Did you guys talk before the trade went down? And then the quarterback's like, what? We traded who? Huh? Right? And that's just a shitty feeling. Why? What? But that's the arrogance, man. The arrogance of these front offices, the arrogance of these coaches, not appreciating like the source of their success is maddening to me. And this is like something that I wish would change radically, but it's just slowly, incrementally, you can see the players becoming a little bit more. And then you have like an Aaron Rodgers who's just upfront about it. Like, I'm going to come play for you, but you need to involve me and at least give me a heads up at the very least, show some transparency around some decisions that are going to impact my ability to do my job. Right? So it's always fascinating to me. So my hope is actually that Josh Allen was involved in this decision, that it wasn't just like we're gonna take care of Josh for his own good. We're gonna remove this player that was causing him anxiety for his own good. No, it should be a collaborative effort, right? No other players deserve that. Okay, maybe an Aaron Donald. Maybe there's a particular player that, in a rare case, that should rise to that level. I think it would make sense if you are going to make a big personnel change on defense that you would involve Aaron Donald in the decision. But the more straightforward one is, hey, the quarterback. Let's collaborate with Jalen Hurts. Because also, a guy like Jalen Hurts, a guy like Tom Brady, they know the league. They know who would be a good fit for them. They know the impact of a move.
Look at two examples from last year when I kind of brushed one of them off. It was like, hey, Patrick Mahomes really likes working with Rashee Rice. I'm like, yeah, so what? That ended up being, that the Chiefs obviously drafted him and it worked out well. CJ Stroud's like, you should draft Tank Dell. So that's what Houston did. And both of those guys had banner years. The quarterbacks know better than the personnel department does. So we could see with Josh Allen where this could be genius. We'll see. Is Diggs moved out, but if we see that the Bills draft a wide receiver of note in round 1 or round 2, and it's like, hey, Josh Allen was working out with them in the offseason and he's the one that tipped them off, and that they listened to him and got his guy, then you're like, okay, that's like what the Chiefs are. That's what the respect Patrick Mahomes gets. That's the respect C.J. Stroud got, and he hadn't even played an NFL snap when he got them to draft Dell.
That is exactly what I was thinking about, where 5 years ago, that story would have not been possible. That the rookie quarterback was lobbying for a wide receiver and the team actually drafted him in the 3rd round. Never going to happen. But now there is more deference shown to the quarterback, a little more appreciation for both their value and just making sure they're happy long term, because you want them on your team long term. You don't want to have the tumultuous situation where you invest in a quarterback and then you have to find a way to offload him when there's, at a point when there's no market for him. Like what happened with Justin Fields. So you don't want those kinds of situations to happen. So invest on the front end to be collaborative, and we're seeing that slowly more and more. Hopefully the Bears do that, right, with Caleb Williams. So what do you expect from Caleb Williams this year with the Bears?
One quick thing back on the other topic, the other end of the spectrum, it just made me think, who's not going to probably you know who's not going to have input on the wide receiver decision for his team that desperately needs one? That's a great NFL quarterback. Justin Herbert is not going to is probably not going to have input on that decision, and it's not going to be. I don't think it'll be a smart move. I mean, unless they take the layup and take Malik Neighbors, and then it doesn't matter. But if they bypass a wide receiver early and take one in the second round, it's probably going to be Harbaugh reaching for a Big Ten or Michigan wide receiver, and Herbert will have no input in on it whatsoever.
There are a ton. I mean, incredible amount of positive leadership qualities with Jim Harbaugh. Right? I would go to war with Jim Harbaugh. Right? If he was my commanding officer, I would be ecstatic. Right? But with those types of coaches, especially those that are on the older end of the age spectrum, they're not going to ask for the input. It's not going to be like dealing with a millennial quarterback. He's just not here for it. It's not happening. It's not going to be a collaboration. It's going to be what Jim wants. What Jim says goes. That's what it's going to be. So, yeah, you're right. That's the perfect sort of other end of the spectrum where you have Herbert versus Stroud, and Stroud's like, kind of like my situation better, right? These teams that have just the cardboard cutout coaches, right? Just the coordinator, or sometimes like retread coaches that have been humbled. That's another thing that's good sometimes. It's funny how the retread coach will be resurrected, and the reason why was that because they were humbled, they were able to put the organization in a better position to thrive. Now, what about Caleb Williams? He's coming in to Chicago. I think that this is a team that seems to be rebuilding the right way. I think they're gonna probably allow him to have some input in building the organization along the way. What do you expect from Caleb Williams this year with the Bears?
I am not a Caleb Williams fan. I am not radically against him. I don't think this is Bryce Young 2.0, but I see red flags on Caleb Williams to the point that I would like to remove myself fantasy-wise from the situation and not have anything to do with any part of the wide receivers, tight end, running back group. I'll take a pass. I'll let everybody else play in that pool. If it works out for them, good for them. But I don't want in on the Caleb Williams regime in Chicago.
Can you elaborate on these red flags?
To expand further on it, I think when I watch Caleb Williams play, when I went through his 22 and 23 tape, a lot of people would liken him to Patrick Mahomes because he can scramble around and make plays. And he does that, but it looked to me more like the Johnny Manziel, Jameis Winston version of that, where it's cool for college. He can scramble around and he can get away from some people, but if you make him be in the pocket, you're going to have problems with Caleb Williams. I don't think he's a traditional thrower of the ball, and I don't think he's that as good of a runner. He's not a run first. He's not going to run his way to glory. So I think he's got mismatched pieces. I would want Caleb Williams to improvise, to play free, and I don't think that will work for long. But you give him a wide receiver like Keenan Allen, who's a meticulous route runner, and I don't think that's what Caleb Williams is going to work best with. So stylistically, I see more flaws in Caleb Williams' game, that he's not a good pocket passer, and he's not going to be able to scramble around in circles in the NFL, buy himself 9 seconds of time and make cool plays. He will on occasion, but he can't make a living doing that. If you make him make his living in the pocket, I think there's going to be problems. On top of everything about Caleb Williams, to me, comes off as like these diva wide receivers we don't like to mess with, because we see they're super talented, but they don't put in the work. They don't make the relationship, whatever it is that causes the diva wide receiver to collapse, even though we know they've got the talent. Caleb Williams just gives me a lot of, he's arrogant and fragile, and there's just, I just don't like his vibe, didn't like his tape. I'm looking at the whole situation going, I'm just going to take a pass on this and see how it works out. I just can't. I've looked multiple times to, like, did I miss something with this? I've gone back multiple times to try to prove to myself that Caleb Williams really was this super stud quarterback. I just don't see it. Every time I go back and look, I just don't see it.
So, if you're drafting in superflex, you would take one of the top receivers over a Caleb Williams, right?
I would trade the 101 to somebody that was white hot on getting Caleb Williams, and either fall back in the first round or get a real player, or players, or pick in a player, second round pick or whatever.
So in a rookie draft, you're going Neighbors, you're going Harrison over Caleb Williams.
I would take Neighbors over Harrison.
Oh no, I know. Oh, that's another question. Damn it.
Oh, I didn't know if that was what you were saying.
We're gonna have another. That's a question later.
So you're saying Caleb Williams won?
You would take those guys over Caleb Williams in superflex.
If I had to be stuck with them, no, I would take one of the other quarterbacks, because I just don't believe in Caleb Williams. If you're forcing me to make the pick, I can't trade it, and I'm going to be quote unquote stuck with this player for the next 5 years, I would probably go with Jaden Daniels for fantasy football purposes, because of what he can do running the ball. Way better than Caleb Williams on the move, and I think a better quarterback all around. But they're not supers. I'm not looking at this class. Like, last year's class was way better than this group. But if you're forcing me to stay in the box on this year's group for fantasy football, I'll take Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams. I would take Penix over Caleb Williams in my heart of hearts, because I really don't think it's going to work out for Caleb Williams. I want to trade that pick versus making that pick.
Well, I think we have a hot take on our hands. I think we have a hot take alert that you would take Michael Penix over. You prefer Michael Penix over Caleb Williams in your heart.
Yes. Yeah, no doubt about that. But I'm not going, whoa, these guys are locks like Jaden Daniel. Like, I would rather have the top three from last year's group. Let me drop some more bombs just to make sure I cleared all of the space. So last year's draft class was way better. Obviously CJ Stroud, but I would take Anthony Richardson over any of these quarterbacks. I would also take, clip it for the hot take, I would also take Will Levis, who is the best quarterback of this entire 2024 group.
You would take Will Levis over. You would take Will Levis. You would take second round. You would draft. You would prefer second round quarterback Will Levis over any of the quarterbacks in this year's rookie class.
From an NFL draft standpoint, absolutely. From a fantasy perspective, Jaden Daniels is, you can't overlook his running ability. And if you're in just your 4-point, your standard QB scoring, Jaden Daniels probably may get the nudge. But I think Will Levis is the most talented quarterback in the 2024 class, but he's not in it.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's stay with the Bears, and we'll come back to the rookie class in a minute. DeAndre Swift. Where are you at with DeAndre Swift?
I can't stand him.
I was like, all right, so we've talked about diva quarterbacks. We've talked about diva wide receivers. Let's talk about a diva running back.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy for Roschon Johnson, but the DeAndre Swift free agent deal is arguably the worst free agent deal of the 2024 offseason.
So incredible news for Roschon, right? Like the ultimate, like sort of a Trojan horse maneuver to get Roschon onto your fantasy team under everyone's nose in the cover of darkness. Just have this glimmering idea of what, DeAndre Swift could be, put him up, post him up as the RB1 on that team in the depth chart, and then everyone just that knows what they're doing, just draft Roschon Johnson.
That would be the way I would forecast it. Obviously, they're going to try to force DeAndre Swift onto the masses, but eventually they'll have to give it up. I think there's a real problem coming with Chicago. Let's back up for a second.
Well, just to level set everybody, Roschon Johnson, because on Player Profiler we have the ADP tab on every player page, okay, and you can go back 14 days, 30 days. So if we go back 30 days since the signing of DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson's ADP is down 4 rounds from slot 150 all the way, beyond that, right? Like slot 140 to, into the 180s. Like that's how far, right? He was all the way up, I think, at one point to like slot 125. Now hovering around 175.
Then you're also going to tell me that Swift's ADP is higher than Rachaad White's, aren't you?
He is being drafted, according to the ADP chart on Player Profiler, on Underdog, he is being drafted at running back 52. That is an incredible value. This is, again, why we love Hero RB, because you can just get your one running back, whether it be Bryce Hall or whether it be Rachaad White, and then you can just wait it out to be the last. Do you agree with this? To be the last team to draft a second running back, you want to be that, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless the value, unless if you do get one of those top guys, and Rachaad's hanging out there, I'm a sucker to get Rachaad.
That is actually a great point. We should mention that. We should mention
outside of that,
there's a scenario where if you're drafting at slot, what it would be, you'd be drafting slot 5, 6, 7. If you're drafting there, right? And you get Bryce in the middle of the first round, and somehow Rachaad White slips to you in the middle of the 5th round, that would be a case where, okay, we're not actually going Hero RB, we're going on the robust side of the running back position, because you just can't say no to Rachaad White there. Then you have just the sickest running back core, and there's fortunately, the wide receiver position has never been deeper. Right, and the high-end wide receivers have a lot of uncertainty around them that we talked about earlier. So that again would be a justification for, a heavy investment in running back in the first 5 rounds. It's a very specific scenario that would have to unfold in order to do that, but you have to be open to that. You can't just be locked in like, oh, I have my running back, I can't draft Rachaad White here. No. At some point, you draft Rachaad White in the 5th round. Come on now, get out of here. But not DeAndre Swift. You're not drafting DeAndre Swift.
Oh, no. I'll never have DeAndre Swift on a fantasy team.
He's just...
I mean,
how many teams want to be a football player, man?
How many teams have to not like him, good teams, for Chicago to then come in and pay him all of that money? Ryan Poles is potentially going to go down as the worst GM in the history of our generation if Caleb Williams flops.
Oh, yes.
Because if you look at, because it's already set up last year, people look and go, oh, Ryan Poles, what a genius. He dumped that number 1, and Carolina took Bryce Young. He avoided the bust. No, Ryan Poles should have took CJ Stroud if he had any brains in his head. So he missed out on a generational franchise quarterback so that he could trade that pick because he was sure Justin Fields was his guy. So not only did he avoid CJ Stroud, he gave into Justin Fields. We're trusting that guy knows something about quarterbacks this year to take Caleb Williams. Like, if Ryan Poles is for you, I'm not sure I want to be with you.
Wow, you just played the result on Ryan Poles. Wow, you came in over the top and you played the result on poor Brian Poles. That's true. I mean, it's true. I mean, if we knew what the cards were, if we were playing blackjack with all the cards facing up, he would have absolutely kept his hand and he would have hit on CJ Stroud. He would have. If he knew, he would have done it. That's right. You have the information. So what you're doing is unfair to Ryan Poles. Okay? You have the information. Now I know that you believe CJ Stroud was the best quarterback in the class last year. I know that. Okay? I get it. Right? I know that. It's fine. But I do believe that there was real merit in that trade down, and I believe that the Bears have been rebuilding the right way. They traded down and they went offensive line. There are some fundamental team-building concepts that they are getting right in Chicago. But you're right. If Caleb Williams is a bust, it's going to cost him his job. That is true.
Even if he's wobbly, I mean, as most of the rookies are, it's not like CJ Stroud is an outlier. So even if Caleb Williams is going to come into the league and be good, it's probably not going to be year one. It's not going to be right off the bat. Then you're giving him DeAndre Swift as his main running back on purpose. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And I love what the Bears are doing with the offensive line. That's a really good defense. So I think what's even worse for Caleb Williams for fantasy football purposes is he's going into a situation where he's just going to try to be minimized because they want to play run game and defense. So I don't like Caleb Williams' rookie projections from what the Bears are trying to do. And then if Caleb is an issue, even if that's just his rookie season, if the Bears start to lose and they look bad, I think some of the ownership's going to have an itchy trigger finger on the coach, and then the GM will be next. And if you take Eberflus out of the equation, who's the brains behind the defense, he's also the problem with the offense, but he's the brains behind the defense. If they pull the trigger on him because they get out to a bad start with a rookie quarterback, with DeAndre Swift as their lead running back, I think there's going to be nothing but chaos for the Bears. It's almost going to be unfair to Caleb Williams if he's going to be allowed to develop within the chaos.
I didn't see any of this coming. You have to understand, I'm here typing out the show sheet, right? Typing out the questions. I didn't see, because you got to understand, here's my position. I'm like, wow, they upgraded their wide receiver room. They've been getting the major investments in the offensive line. Keenan Allen's a Bear, right? I'm like, this is an amazing situation for Caleb Williams. And you're like, well, actually, I see chaos everywhere. I'm like, wait, what? I didn't know. You're freaking me out, man. If you weren't so damn right about so many things, I wouldn't be as nervous, but now I am. But you're right, though. It makes sense. I mean, an improvisational wide receiver like a Garrett Wilson would be such a better fit for a Caleb Williams than more of a precise route runner like a Keenan Allen. Like, that makes sense to me, right? Where you would Keenan Allen would perform best with a traditional pocket passer. I get it.
With Justin Herbert, who if he had been consulted, they would have kept to make Justin Herbert happy, but they don't give a crap about what Justin Herbert thinks.
And it comes full circle. It comes full circle. And then they're bringing in DeAndre Swift, who two of the better run franchises, who are both playoff teams last year, gave DeAndre Swift every opportunity to secure a long-term contract, and they both passed. Right? So if those two organizations pass, Brad Holmes, Howie Roseman, they look at DeAndre Swift and they pass. That is a red flag. That, again, I hadn't considered that. Now, in a previous show, we talked about the dynasty value of Justin Fields. What would you give in dynasty for Justin Fields?
I'm not hot for him, but I see the opportunity. If you can steal him, whatever the definition of stealing him is, in whether you're super flex or traditional, he's gonna take that job over at some point. I don't think the fans aren't going to stand for the Russell Wilson act for very long with Justin Fields sitting behind him. So if you get Justin Fields in playing football, he's good at fantasy. He's not the greatest at the football side of it, but he's all right. But for fantasy, he's really nice. So I would like to have him. I'm not going out of my way. I'm not making a big heroic call to bet up a ton on Justin Fields, but I see there's going to be value there this year.
Would you give up the 112 in a super flex rookie draft?
I don't think so.
Okay, I would.
It seems a little hot. Did you say Superflex?
I would in Superflex. I would.
Oh
do
yeah,
it.
yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Superflex, that makes sense when everybody's scrambling for quarterbacks for sure. That's a great quarterback to have in the hole because I mean, I think he could end up starting week one. I'm not buying the Russell Wilson's the locked in starter, but even if Russell Wilson is the locked in starter, it won't be long before Justin Fields is demanded to be in.
Yeah, because basically then it's the choice of Justin Fields or trying to hit on the wide receiver the Bills draft. That's really that particular draft pick, right? Who do you think the Bills are going to draft?
Oh boy. I could see them, just given what their wide receiver room is now, with two smaller wide receivers, and I really like Curtis Samuel, and Shakir is solid. I would figure them to want a physical presence at wide receiver, and where they're going to be picking at. I could see a Keon Coleman maybe being their heavy. Maybe they want to. I don't think they'll be. Brian Thomas will be around if they want to go that route for the field stretcher, end zone threat, taller guy. But I think that's the direction that they're not going to get McConkey or Roman Wilson or anything like that. I do think the Bills will draft a power running back like a Braylon Allen, and the James Cook value is going to collapse post NFL draft.
Just makes sense, right? Just makes sense. James Cook is 200 pounds. He doesn't profile as an every down player, and it's just the way NFL teams look at their roster. They're like, we are in need of a grinder back, and we don't have a lot of needs. We have a talent-rich franchise, but we have this one need, and this is it's just, it would suck because now you've got a young, explosive running back whose value gets vaporized. That's no good.
Yep.
But it just makes logical sense that would be the move that they would make. Like, that's just the classic third-round running back pick that everybody hates. Right? Remember the Tank Bigsby pick? I mean, it was just everybody hated it. Not a single person liked it. Maybe one guy that thought Tank Bigsby was better than Travis Etienne, but that one guy was an idiot. Drake London. What would you give up for Drake London in Dynasty?
I'm sure I'm like you. I think he's going to be a wide receiver one now in the new regime. So whatever I can get away with, if I take a look at wide receivers in and around his ADP, if I could give someone a Brandon Ayuk, if I could give someone a Devonta Smith, if I had to hook a draft pick with it or a small prospect with it, if somebody would take Nico Collins, I mean his ADP is somehow holding up. Addison, if I could get people into last year's favorite rookies, Addison or Jackson Smith and Jigba, plus a little something, or one or the other of those wide receivers plus a little something to get to London, whatever it took, whatever bag of beads I could get to get in on Drake London. But and I've tried to, and clients have tried to, but a lot of people are believing in the new Atlanta Falcons. So I was hoping it would be easier, and it is in some cases, but I try to get away. With the least possible pay in to get him. But he's going to wide receiver one.
We're not as bullish because it's been 2 years and we haven't seen it yet. Everything's changing. Kirk Cousins changes everything. I understand that. But Kyle Pitts is there, and Bijan Robinson is there, and the advanced metrics for Drake London deteriorated last year. They were amazing. Like, if he followed up his air yard share and his yards per route run from 2022 into 2023, then I'd be a little more willing to say, hey, efficiency plus opportunity equals fantasy points. We believe in that equation. But too often, it doesn't just equate to a straight line up, right? So there's only so far we can project a guy, right? Where we've seen a hell of a lot more from Jalen Waddle, okay? And Jalen Waddle's also young. He's in his super prime. He's still got 3+ years of his prime left. And, we prefer a Jalen Waddle, for example. That would be, a Chris Olave, a DJ Moore. Right? It's close, but there are just certain players that are still in the prime of their career that are sitting on seasons in the bank where they've proven that, hey, I can be a wide receiver one in this league. And fundamentally, Drake London has not. You want to talk about Devontae Smith? You want to talk about Brandon Ayuk? Sure. I'd rather have Drake London. And you can go to our Dynasty rankings, and you can see exactly where we have these guys selected and slotted in. And you can make up your mind for yourself. But generally speaking, if someone is going to give you a Godfather offer for Drake London, just based on the simple fact that we haven't seen anything yet in 2 years, I would take it. And just be okay knowing that, hey, fundamentally, this is the type of bet that you take it 10 times, it's going to hit 6 times. Right? And then 4 times, like the extrapolation math works against you. And that's okay. It's okay. Right? That's okay. We talked about Travis Etienne earlier. What are the Jaguars going to do on draft day? Because they now have a glaring need at wide receiver, and this seems to be the most under-the-radar, under-discussed team for fantasy.
I'm not so sure they're going to draft a wide receiver early, but not impossible. But I'm peeling back to, let me put out my first 2 Jaguar thoughts, and we can go from there. I think the Jaguars are the worst team in the AFC South. That's going to suddenly be one of the best divisions, and best divisions into the future, because I think Will Levis is going to be a star, but then Anthony Richardson went to the Colts, Stroud went to Houston, Trevor Lawrence is the 4th best quarterback in his own division. The Jacksonville Jaguars are poorly run. I don't trust anything that they're going to do. The Calvin Ridley trade was ridiculous. Their offseason has not been wise. I just think this team is going to spin its wheels. If they draft a wide receiver, if we knew from, somebody came from the future and said, hey, they drafted a wide receiver, I'm sure it would be the wrong one, whatever you want to say the wrong one is. I am not into what the Jacksonville Jaguars are doing.
But you would agree Christian Kirk in the 5th round in best ball and Underdog is a good idea.
Yeah, Ingram, for fantasy football purposes, Ingram, Christian Kirk, especially now with Ridley out of the way, it's money. That's going to work.
I just don't get it. Like, there are some ADPs that correct immediately. You've seen this, right? You see this all the time. Transaction happens. You're like, oh, I wonder how fast the market's going to take. There's going to be a delay. There's going to be an adjustment period, and then boom, the correction happens right away. You're like, oh, that's exactly where I would draft that guy. God damn it, the public is so smart. But I can tell you right now, Christian Kirk, Rachaad White, it's like there's a cognitive dissonance around these players. There's just certain players that people are out on, RC. They don't like them. There's a lack of sex appeal. You can't explain it, but it's irrational. And when you see that, and you're like, hey, there's no guarantee they draft a receiver in the first round. And given where they're drafting, he's not going to be one of these top 3 studs. So Christian Kirk is going to be a de facto wide receiver 1, and their defense isn't that good, and their offensive line's not that good. This is not a well-built franchise, like you said. Like, at no point have I ever said, hey, the Jacksonville Jaguars have really done a hell of a job with a rebuild. Right? It's been, one of those. I've said that about the Bears for all those fundamental reasons, right? That they're investing in the right positions in the right time to build a team. The Texans microwaved a rebuild in record time, and I tip my cap to them. We know the Lions did it in a methodical way that was absolutely by the book until they started drafting running backs and middle linebackers in the first round. But up until that point, it was by the book, and it was a stellar rebuild. At no point is like, oh, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, great front office. No. So what you have is a team that's going to be forced to throw, especially in that division. So when you think about Stroud and the likely ascendance now with Ridley in Tennessee, of Will Levis, and the additional scoring that Anthony Richardson brings to the table, yeah, they're going to need to throw the ball. And for all the weaknesses and all when I think of Trevor Lawrence, the first sort of superlative I can come up with, the first descriptor is just mediocrity. Like, he is the definition of mediocrity. And the thing is, like, he's got the flowing hair, he's got the first pick overall, he's got the big body, he's got the athleticism. He's got everything except that thing that makes great quarterbacks. Like, it's like, imagine Trevor Lawrence in Baker Mayfield's body, right? Or imagine Baker Mayfield in Trevor Lawrence's body. Think about that, right? Trevor Lawrence is getting the bare minimum out of his physical skills. It's almost embarrassing. Like, you're embarrassed for him. Like, he should be better. Everyone should be better. And a guy like Baker Mayfield, a guy like Gardner Minshew, they would do anything, right? They would walk over hot coals to have that body, to have that athleticism. I mean, Gardner Minshew, if you could just give Gardner Minshew a Trevor Lawrence suit to wear, I mean, take the Raiders to the Super Bowl. I mean, it would be amazing. It would be so good. But that's not how it works, right? We have what we have, and now we got this guy that's just like mid.
Very
it's
mediocre,
kind of
very mid.
I'm always, when I watch the Jaguars, I'm embarrassed because I'm like, man, this guy should be better. Like, and I feel like he knows it down deep, and then like when he goes home at night, like he feels it, and there's nothing he can do. And it's just awkward.
I think he's the taller, more physical tools version of Bryce Young. They love scripted quarterbacks who will yes sir, no sir the coach, and they'll play to the playbook. And that's why I think Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram are going to be so money for fantasy, because Trevor Lawrence is a creature of habit. He's going to pick his guys and he's going to wear them out. He did that for Ridley for a while. He did that with Christian Kirk. Then he did that with Ridley for a while when Kirk was out. I think no matter who they bring in there, Trevor Lawrence is going to have his relationship with Kirk and Ingram.
You're not going to believe it. He is so consistent in his mediocrity. So consistent. I mean, he's like a metronome of mediocrity. right? Doesn't miss games. Same as like, do you know for 2 straight years that 2 straight years, Trevor Lawrence has been the wide receiver 13. I mean, it's so perfect, right? Hey, we got Ridley. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Same thing. Fine. Right? Get you a new first-round wide receiver. Nope. He had like, a top 5 wide receiver season in Atlanta. That's okay. He'll be wide receiver 20 with us. No problem. Trevor Lawrence here, signing in, checking in for my getting you my delivering, which is great for Kirk. That's a value.
Yeah.
Right? Kirk's wide receiver 18, that's a big win. That's what he's going to be. Kirk's going to be wide receiver 18, and he's going to be quarterback 13. And that's just what it is. And it's just embarrassing. It's just embarrassing because he's so physically gifted.
Doug Peterson saved him from being one of the guys where we're looking back right now going, we got to give up on this guy. We got to dump him like Mac Jones and Justin Fields. Like this, he's not cutting it. He's still got a vibe in the NFL, but I think this one more year, and I'm starting to see people starting to question just how good Trevor Lawrence is from the mainstream. So it's not going to be long before it.
This?
But of course, that's just their guy.
Now it's taking them a long time.
They can't have the generational talent from the mouths of everybody who told us that Trevor Lawrence was better than Andrew Luck, a generational talent, who then turned around and told us how great Bryce Young was, are still backing those guys. They're still pining for Sam Darnold and Jameis Winston to fall into the right place to get unlocked.
Oh, they do like Sam Darnold, don't they?
Oh, they love Sam Darnold.
You're right. They like Sam Darnold. So you
they
get
tried
Ridley,
to bury
right?
Baker.
You get Ridley. You get your Trevor Lawrence. You get Ridley. Your completion percentage, your yards, and your touchdowns go down. They go down against the Colts secondary, against Houston, right? Against Tennessee, right? These defenses are only going to get better.
Yep.
And the only thing that's going to save his fantasy production is the fact that those offenses are also getting better. Right, so he can thank the growth and development of a Will Levis, of an Anthony Richardson, on him maintaining his 4,000 yards, his 65% completion percentage, his 7 yards per attempt, like his 24 touchdowns. Like it's just so
6 or 7 wins. Man. It was they were in the wild card hunt till about week 16, and then it just didn't work out.
It's not going to work out again. It's interesting though. I think this year we're going to be looking at a reckoning around Trevor Lawrence, where they finished last, and suddenly there's going to be questions, and it's going to be interesting, right? It's gonna be that's fun. To me, that's fun because again,
we could have a Bryce Young and Trevor Lawrence reckoning all at the same time.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't think so because Bryce Young was so bad last year that no, that's not going to happen at all. What's going to happen is what you saw after year 2, that was peak Trevor Lawrence, where he puts together a mediocre season, but that was such a big leap forward from the 12 fantasy points he was giving you the year before that now he's just a year away from being elite. We could easily see that. No, RC, you're not going to get that. You're going to get actual, improvement from Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young is going to be a value in fantasy, and it's going to set everybody up. So if you have him in Dynasty, hold. You could even acquire him in trade, but then at some point during the season, you got to get out. You got to get out. And if you see cracks, and the cracks are, he has a great matchup, and this is the thing. This was the giveaway with Trevor Lawrence, where he would be especially frustrating in great matchups. And when you see that with Bryce Young, that's going to be your signal to get out. But there'll be plenty of people celebrating a big game for Bryce Young. Bryce Young's gonna have some big games, and then they're gonna be right back on it. They're gonna be, oh, this guy, right?
I hope so for the people that are looking for an off exit for Bryce Young. You should have never been there. You should have listened to our podcast last year, and you wouldn't be in this position.
Well, people can always look back at old podcasts and realize how wrong they were.
No, they get deleted.
That's
I hear
true.
tales they get
now's
deleted.
not the time to sell Bryce Young. I mean, I just want to explain to people. Now's not the time to say, you should feel free to get out of Trevor Lawrence at any point. But Bryce Young, I think there's time. You still have time.
Oh yeah, I got what you're saying. I'm so anti Bryce Young. I see what you're saying. His value is going to puff up, and then you're going to want to dump him. It's the price. The price is not now.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson's got like a 10-catch game. Everyone's gonna be there's gonna be a narrative around the acquisition of Deontay Johnson and how that fixed him. And it's gonna be. Don't you know how it works?
Yeah, if you're already stuck,
how it works.
There's an off ramp coming. If he has a good week one, whatever, even if that's a screen pass to, I don't even know who the running back's going to be, and that if Rasheed Blackshear takes it to the house for an 80-yard touchdown and he gets credited for all those numbers, everybody say he's turned around, he's on his way. That you want that moment to sell him because he doesn't have much value right now, but if he does anything good, people are going to lose their minds.
Oh yeah,
Will Levis is forced to start, throws for 4 touchdowns at his debut, and everybody's like,
oh, that's an interesting.
If Bryce Young has 2 touchdowns in week 1, everybody's going to proclaim him as fixed and back and better than ever.
That's interesting. Yeah, if I see positive signs for Will Levis in week 1, that's going to be a buy high situation. Classic buy high situation. Oh, absolutely. Oh yeah. So if we look at the 2024 schedule, okay, it's not out yet. So I'm interested to see when does the schedule come out? Next month?
They don't. They just kind of make it up and announce it about 3 days ahead of time that the schedule's coming out. It used to be already out by now. Then it used to be before the draft. Now it's, I think last year it was after the draft. It was in like May, early May.
All right. So by this time next month, we'll know the schedule. So I'll be interested to see the Carolina Panthers schedule. That'll be fascinating to check out. So we mentioned, okay, Christian Kirk, that's an easy smash every time, mid-5th round. What's a wide receiver who you like, but his ADP is just you can't do it?
I like Puka, but I can't pay the price for Puka. There's too many other guys around him, and I think it all hinges on Stafford. If something happens with Stafford, then I know that you could say that about a lot of quarterback wide receiver situations, but I think Puka especially. Tied to Stafford for the future, because if you're looking for Dynasty and you're like, hey, I want to get a nice run with this guy, if Stafford's done in a year, like if they draft Penix and he's their heir apparent, which is what I hope happens, we don't know if he's going to have that same relationship with Puka. It's like Stafford picks that one guy the years with Cup, then last year with Puka. We don't know what that's going to be a year from now when Stafford's contract is done and the Rams maybe don't want to go forward with him for the cost.
Yeah, for me, it's Michael Pittman. I love Michael Pittman, but drafting him in the middle of the 3rd round, knowing that his quarterback is just siphoning so many, pass plays out of the offense.
Yep.
Like when you have Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, the math just doesn't add up for Michael Pittman in the 3rd round. It just doesn't make sense. I can't do it. Like, you have to be so efficient. And last year, his yards per reception for 2 straight years has hovered around 10. So it's just the math doesn't make sense. There were these games with Gardner Minshew last year that inflated his numbers, but not doing it. Can't do it. Love the player. Can't do it. And on the other hand, I love Terry McLaurin, and I also like that ADP. Are you bullish on Terry McLaurin this year?
I've never been a big McLaurin fan, but this this year, where his ADP is at,
Sick.
it's a value because you want to acquire, you want to possess. Like, I'm not a big Christian Kirk guy either from a talent, from a watching standpoint, but I know Christian Kirk's going to be way better than where he's being drafted. McLaurin is going to be in that range because he's the clear number one wide receiver in Washington, and they're obviously not going to take they're not going to take Neighbors at number two, so McLaurin's gonna be the number one for a Cliff Kingsbury offense with a very good Jaden Daniels at quarterback. This is going to be the best situation McLaurin may have ever found himself in.
Bingo. Finally, McLaurin as a quarterback. I mean, that's the thing. It's going to happen. This is another. Where's the efficiency of the marketplace? We know the Washington's going quarterback. It's going to be a big upgrade. Sam Howell's not good. What's the problem here? What am I missing? Right? Now, another receiver getting an upgrade, George Pickens. He's going exactly at the turn on Underdog. We talked about this. He's going basically same ADP as Rachaad White, right? Now, clearly would rather have Rachaad White, but if you could do Rachaad White, George Pickens at the 4-5 turn, that's pretty good, right?
I will probably get suckered in by Pickens because he may be my favorite talent at wide receiver to watch, or one of the top three. But on the other end of the spectrum, I think Arthur Smith is the worst thing to happen to professional football, that especially offensive football, that could be. And I am so concerned that between him and Tomlin, it's going to be another year of C blocking Pickens from being he should be the gangbuster runaway.
Stop. What the fuck is a C block? What are you talking about?
I was cleaning that up.
Cleaning what up? What are you talking about? What's a C block?
Is someone in the chat can explain that so I don't have to say it on?
Is that a cut block? He's asking him to wait. They don't ask Pickens to pass block. What's a C block?
Pickens is awesome. Arthur Smith is not. Mike Tomlin is not. Russell Wilson is not going to be the key that turns it. Justin Fields would not be the key that turns George Pickens' style. So I'm worried. Now you got it. Somebody tip you off.
In the chat. Thank you, chat. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. You're worried. RC Fischer legitimately worried that George Pickens is going to be cock-blocked.
Yes. By Arthur Smith.
Thank you. Doak Walker. I love Doak Walker. We have the Doak Walker Award. Doak Walker Award for the most helpful chat comment. Thank you, Doak. We appreciate it. Because there is a such thing as a cut block. I mean, that is a thing that exists. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows we're not talking about cut blocking. We're talking about cock blocking. That's what we're talking about. I just want to make sure I get it right for the YouTube censors. If you want to demonetize this, it's cock block, not cut block. YouTube, it's cock block. So if you want to demonetize, go ahead. I want to make sure I enunciate just right, so you fuckers can demonetize the show. Yeah, it's fuckers with an F. Okay. Now,
F them. Okay, good.
Why. Thank you for cleaning it up again. All right. So, give me. Let's just your final assessment, because I know you talked about Will Levis, and I agree with you. It's very exciting. I'm in on that backfield. I'm in on the wide receivers. I still think there's a year left of production from DeAndre Hopkins. We saw it last year from Adam Thielen. Why not? Why can't he have an Adam Thielen season, right? What is your overall assessment of the Tennessee offense? You think they can win the AFC South?
I don't know that they'll go that far because Houston is several steps ahead, but it's all, for me, to try to project them going forward is what offensive linemen do they draft in the first round and what other offensive linemen do they add. Their whole problem last year, they wouldn't have had Mike Vrabel get fired if they had an offensive line. They had a bad offensive line to start the season. They got hurt. He was having to go with, it was unfair to Vrabel at a certain point because he was having to go with third string offensive linemen by the time Levis got in. Practice squad guys they just signed on a Monday were starting on a Sunday. They had a game where I think the entire starting offensive line went down in the same quarter later in the season. It was just a mess. So I want to see what they do with the offensive line. They're slated to pick one of the top offensive tackles. That will be a good thing. Yes. They get a top offensive tackle and one other good offensive lineman. This team is loaded.
So look out, Houston. I love it. I love it. Now, we talked about Spears. You think is he's right up there with Roschon, right, in terms of late round picks for running backs?
Yeah, I mean, I love Tyjae Spears. I hate that they signed Tony Pollard. I really thought they were going to turn the backfield over to Spears, and he may steal it anyway.
Oh, I can't believe you really thought that? You listen, man. You know that's not. You can't. You know how these teams work. They lost a running back, so they have to add a running back. they're
I wish it would have been DeAndre Swift. It would have been somebody lesser. So
right.
Spears
they did add a good running back. They added a hell of a running back, but I think there's room for both of them to eat. And I think the larger point is you're drafting both Pollard and Spears with confidence because this offense is going to be so good, and this is going to be a shootout division. Right? We're always looking for that division that's the sneaky shootout division. AFC South a couple of years ago, perfect example. It's the AFC South this year. That's your sneaky shootout division. So who else? So in the triple digit picks, right? In the double digit rounds in best ball on Underdog, who else besides Spears and Roschon?
Like both of those guys, Kendre Miller, Brown from Cincinnati, Gus Edwards if he's lasting that far.
Chase Brown.
But the one way off the grid that I like as a cheap investment to just sit on and see what happens, Ezekiel Elliott could be a raging bargain. I thought, and I have not been a big Ezekiel Elliott fan. I thought he looked really good for the Patriots last year. And that Dallas situation, I'm not saying they're going to get him and install him in as the starter, but I think he could find his way back to Dallas, especially if Dallas drafts Jonathan Brooks. And if Brooks isn't ready to go off of his ACL, or they just want to bring him up to speed slowly, Ezekiel Elliott may end up being the lead running back for Dallas, and everybody goes bonkers. For the price of Ezekiel Elliott, it's worth a look. Then if they draft Trey Benson or whoever it is that you like to be the starter, then if Ezekiel Elliott signs with the Jaguars or the Titans or whatever you don't like, you can dump him. It's not going to cost you much to take a look, but I think Ezekiel Elliott's just sitting there lurking. And he's going to get an opportunity, and it's going to be to a place that needs him. I don't think it's just going to be him signing on to be, one of the gang.
I love it. Ezekiel Elliott returns to Dallas and is one of the top values in fantasy football. Finally, I get to draft Ezekiel. You're trying to say that finally I can draft Zeke?
Be finally my first time too. Yeah.
I mean, I can't wait. And I have 10 burning questions for you. 10 burning questions to close out the show. And we're going to get into it after this. This episode brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has been sponsoring Player Profiler and everything we're doing here since 2020. Sign up. Use promo code UNDERWORLD for a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. 100% instant deposit match up to $100. And you're like, oh, well, everyone's on Underdog. Not true. There's plenty of people in this audience that have not yet tried out Underdog, and it's time. They're adding more sports. They're adding more contests. Like when we're heading into NFL draft season, there's the rookies and sophomores game. When you think about way too early fantasy football, that's what Underdog is. When you think about best ball, That's what Underdog is. And if you can pick players at the end of an Underdog fantasy best ball draft that are under rostered, that few people are picking at all, and that guy, like Kyren Williams, hits, you will likely experience positive returns. All you need is that one guy at the end who no one else is rostering, and the way to find that guy is to listen to us. UnderdogFantasy.com. The promo code is Underworld. 100% deposit match up to $100 with promo code Underworld. Underdog makes everything we do possible. 10 burning questions with RC Fischer. Off we go. What do you think of Bo Nix in Seattle?
If he goes to Seattle, I'm a shoulder shrug. He's all right. He's Trevor Lawrence range good. I think he's capable, but I don't think he's going to light the world on fire. Sam Howell, I think, has something to try to groom, but that may not work out. So I don't think Bo Nix would be walking into a gifted situation where he's going to hit the ground running, or that it's no guarantee. So you'd be a year from now looking at Bo Nix potentially on a and he's okay. The situation is okay. I'm just not that excited about it.
Jackson Smith and Jigba is a bust.
And I don't know if he's a bust from where he's for the price that people paid for him. Yes, but I mean, you got Metcalf and Lockett there, and especially if Geno Smith is going to be, he's going to defer to those guys. He's going to have a better relationship with those guys, so he's going to have to wait his turn. But now we're a year later. Like if Jackson Smith and Jigba was in this year's draft, what would he be? The 8th best wide receiver? The 9th best wide receiver in this draft? I think it's just he had a fortunate year last year that there wasn't that many great wide receivers, and then he just landed in a terrible spot for him. And like a lot of these guys we're going to talk about, wide receivers that are super talented, they're gonna land in places that's just gonna wreck it for either the main guy, whoever the main guy is, or it's gonna wreck it for this rookie that we really love.
See, here's why this is going to be a much more chaotic draft for fantasy football. Last year, it was a better quarterback class than a wide receiver class. And what ended up happening was these quarterbacks, these elite quarterbacks, go to teams like Houston, and they elevate all the wide receivers, most notably Nico Collins, right? So it's just all positive. It's a net positive for the whole fantasy football landscape. This year, it's a nice quarterback class. You're going to get an enhancement of fantasy production for a couple teams, right? Maybe Bo Nix exceeds expectations, takes over the job, and he elevates DK Metcalf. Could happen, right? Sure, right? Troy Franklin would sign off on that. However, the wide receivers are so good that they are going to cannibalize targets from a lot of wide receivers we like. They're going to end up on teams we don't want good wide receivers ending up on. They are going to create projection chaos where there's injecting so much uncertainty into the target distribution that it just makes fantasy football harder. Right? Where the quarterback, the last year's class made fantasy easier, this year's class, where the talent is concentrated, is going to make fantasy football harder. So when you go to Player Profiler, you go to the NFL draft section, you see the draft order. Bears 1, Caleb Williams. Washington Commanders 2, Jaden Daniels. Okay, and we know why you like Jaden Daniels. You have Jaden Daniels as your QB1 in this class for fantasy football. He's just a better player overall than Caleb Williams, plus a better pure runner. So for a lot of reasons, for fantasy football purposes specifically, you believe he's a better option than Caleb Williams. Then you have New England. Who do you have New England drafting?
I think they're going to move out of that spot, but if they were staying in and drafting a quarterback, I assume that they would take May, but whoever they take, that whole situation is a disaster, so I wouldn't want any part of it.
What about the Giants? The Giants at 6?
The Giants are supposedly trying to get in on May, which is apropos because I think he's Daniel Jones 2.0. So the Giants and the Patriots are maybe two of the worst situations fantasy wise in the game. And if they take the Mays or the McCarthys of the world, it's not going to get any better. And I feel bad for those guys if they land there.
So you're higher on May than McCarthy?
Yeah, and that's not an endorsement of May. I think McCarthy is a joke the way he's being talked about.
You think McCarthy's a joke?
He's a joke.
Wow.
He's the Desmond Ritter. He's the Bryce Young of this draft. Ooh, the quarterback who runs the offense. He knows, he's good with the play action. He hands it off. He's gonna make that throw off the play action every so often. He's gonna go 17 of 24 for 160 yards and no touchdowns, but we almost won the game. I don't want anything to do with that for fantasy football purposes. This was Desmond Ritter and Bryce Young version 2024.
So there's really only 3 quarterbacks you like at all, and it's you have to like Caleb Williams because you know that he's going to be the starter right away. He does have great numbers, RC, great numbers. Right? You just think he's overrated.
So does Bo Nix have great numbers in the same conference. So did Penix have great numbers in the same conference.
Well, that's true. That is true. So, but I mean, you would still rather have Caleb Williams over Penix.
No.
So really,
dynasty-wise,
you only like 2 quarterbacks in this class, Daniels and Penix. That's it.
Daniels, Penix, and I'm a shoulder shrug on Bo Nix. I think they're all of these guys are going to land poorly, except for Caleb Williams is an obvious week 1 starter. Jaden Daniels is an obvious week 1 starter. I think everyone else is going to be a backup.
And you want Penix going to the Rams.
I want Penix going to the Rams to be the heir apparent for Stafford.
Oh, wow. Okay. So are you also in agreement with the general consensus that we have a big 3 wide receivers in this class?
No. We have a big 10.
Okay. But at the top, different top 3? Then everyone's top 3 is some version of Neighbors, Harrison, and Adunze.
Harrison is not in my top 5, so yes, I have a different top 3.
Where can people find your rankings?
On fantasyfootballmetrics.com or ffmetrics.com.
Go there and subscribe, and you can see exactly where he has these guys. I'm not going to ask him where he has Harrison. You're going to have to go and find out. Oh, okay. So this is making me very happy. This is making me very. Give us a guy that's in your top 5. You don't have to say where he is in your top 5 that would surprise people.
Probably Malachi Corley would be a top 5 surprise. I mean, I like McConkey and Wilson and Brian Ty. I like all the guys that a lot of people like, but having Corley up that high or Malik Washington up that high, maybe a bit of a mild shocker. There's just so many great wide receivers in this draft. It's crazy.
I mean, Western Kentucky, I love underrated small school wide receivers. I've circled Malachi Corley. I mean, basically, there's 2 guys I love. I love Dylan Lobb and Malachi Corley. Do you love Dylan Lobb too?
I do. I think he is. I should say, I hope he gets a shot. My fear for him is that he's going to get C blocked by the NFL wherever he lands, and it's going to take him a while to get an opportunity. He's going to have to really grind his way to get an opportunity.
You're talking about you think the NFL might cock block him. That's what you're saying. And I don't think that's true. I think they appreciate him. They invited him to the combine. They were absolutely full of praise. Scouts love Dylan Lobb's pass catching ability at the Senior Bowl. This is different than an Austin Eckler situation.
It's different than an Evan Hull situation.
Yes,
I had the
Evan
same
Hull
thing
was
said about him
not.
at
They
the
were not
Senior Bowl.
saying nearly what they
That's
the analysis of Evan Hull at the Senior Bowl was nothing close to what we saw from Dylan Lobb. I think that Dylan Lobb is the real deal. He could go as high as third round in the NFL draft.
wow.
Get ready for it, RC.
That is a hot take.
Oh yes, I think he'll realistically, I think he's a fourth round pick, but where the NFL is now and the focus on the passing game, I think you will be pleasantly surprised where Dylan Lobb goes in the draft. So look out for that. I think we both agree Jonathan Brooks is going to Dallas.
I think that it's Trey Benson, but it could be Jonathan Brooks.
Okay. All right.
I'm not against that.
So why do you think that even though this class is so good, we agree it's good, it's great, why weren't more of the receivers outside the big three? Well, you know who the big three are, right? The traditional big three are Harrison, Neighbors, and Dunze, right? You know that.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you believe that outside of those guys, these other receivers struggled to be dominant statistically?
Man, that is a huge question. And every one of them's got a little bit of a different circumstance. Like, if you're a wide receiver for the Georgia Bulldogs, you're screwed. I don't even know why a wide receiver would ever go there. Is that Bowers can't put up big numbers. McConkey couldn't put up big. I mean, they should have. If they would have gone other places, they would have had major. George Pickens never got the due statistically. But it may be that there's just so many good wide receivers. I mean, look at all the wide receivers that are coming out in this draft, how good they are. It's a groundswell that's going to keep coming. Maybe these schools, they've got so many good wide receivers. It's hard to go to a top school and just be an instant breakout as a freshman or a sophomore when you're like a Javon Baker, who's a talented enough wide receiver. He goes to Alabama, he's lost. We wouldn't even hardly care about Javon Baker if he stayed at Alabama. He breaks off and goes to Central Florida. He's the number one wide receiver. He gets all the targets, good and bad targets. He gets to show off. He would have never probably gotten that chance at Alabama because Alabama has so many other talented receivers. So I think some of them are just blocked by the talent that's above them, and the wide receiver talent across the land just keeps growing. I mean, this draft class is crazy how good it is at wide receiver.
So these receivers were either cock blocked by their teammates or cock blocked by their team situations. One way or just at some point, some way, somehow, a bunch of these receivers were cock blocked, is what you're saying.
Several were.
That's right. A lot of cock blocking happening. All right. Now, I'm going to ask you specifically who you prefer, okay? Because it's close for me. I already mentioned, by the way, you can verify this on the show sheet and the notes I sent you that I told you I have Malachi Corley ahead of guys like Ricky Pearsall, ahead of a Roman Wilson. That I am on record saying it in the show sheet that I sent you yesterday. I'm not just making it up to be agreeable. I'm a big Malachi Corley fan. I just don't know if I've had an opportunity on any show to really express myself about Malachi Corley. Ricky Pearsall versus Roman Wilson. Break these two guys down.
I like them both. I'll take Roman Wilson from a fantasy football perspective because I think he's better built to be that slot target hound that could be a faster Amon-Ra St. Brown, where Pearsall has to be, and you need to have him linked to a specific, a higher end quarterback. And if he lands with the higher end quarterbacks, he's probably going to be number 2, number 3 or so in the pecking order, where I think Wilson could be a quarterback's best friend as that small slot Amon-Ra type. So love them both, but I'll lean Wilson. But depending on where they land, they could jump below. And
Wilson and Corley, man. That's why it's a struggle for me because I love so many of these players, and I know I can't have them all, right? So I know I have to just follow the ADP, go Wilson, and then hope that I can maybe trade up, trade in, trade back in, make sure I get Law, make sure I get Corley. I really am hoarding, late second, third round picks. I really want these guys.
This is the draft to accumulate seconds and early thirds and sell your firsts to get an asset plus their second or third.
Right,
you'll get a better player.
You could be getting a guy late third round, not late third. It'd be early. Maybe in superflex, but let's just say for just all types of drafts, late second, early third, you could get a great player plus a Malachi Corley, plus a Roman Wilson, plus a Dylan Lobb, and then you're also getting basically an equivalent talent. Who knows, right? This is going to be the year where the guy that goes mid-first round could easily be outscored by the guy that goes mid-second round, then outscored by the guy that goes mid-third round, right? And in Superflex, the great crime in Superflex will be that a J.J. McCarthy, a Drake May
already seeing
is
it.
selected over an elite receiver. That's going to happen. Like, there are going to be the saddest thing, the craziest thing is going to be, what's going to happen. There's going to be some landing spot that people like, and there's going to be some trading up that happens. Who knows what? A Drake May ends up in a somehow, just the way the draft shakes out, a Drake May, a J.J. McCarthy ends up in some sort of peach landing spot.
Minnesota, let's say.
Somehow Minnesota gets up and gets one of these guys, right? So Minnesota comes up and gets one of these guys. And then you're in Superflex, and the guy in your league that never trades and needs a quarterback is going to pass on a Malik Neighbors for overrated quarterback X that goes to Minnesota. That's a thing that's going to happen.
And it will absolutely happen. And you can trade, if you're the holder of that number 5 pick, let's say, if that scenario happens and everybody's chasing McCarthy into the top 5 in Superflex, you can trade that pick for a player and their second round pick, and you'll get great talent. The talent that's available in the second round in Superflex is insane. I want all the picks in the second round in Superflex.
What about deeper? What about like third, fourth round? Is there a wide receiver? And give me one wide receiver and one running back in those deeper rounds that you're targeting.
My favorite later round running back, and I don't know if he'll get drafted higher than I expect and force his way out of it. But I think the more I watch of Rachaad Ali, the more I'm in love with his overall ability, and he's being hidden because he got hurt at the Senior Bowl. Nothing devastating, nothing to his knee or his feet or anything. So he can't participate in any of the combine or pro day stuff. So I think he's just hiding out there. He may be the most talented runner that I've seen this year, him and Trey Benson. From just a pure runner standpoint, we can argue size and landing spots and all that kind of stuff, but I'm really impressed with what I've seen from Rachaad Ali, and he's just kind of sliding back there because he's not been a part of the combine or pro day process.
How early would you draft Trey Benson?
If Trey Benson goes to Dallas, he's going to be in the top 7 of the rookie draft.
We know that. Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Look, sorry. Excuse me. If he doesn't go to Dallas,
I think he's late first round.
So like the 10th overall?
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
Okay, great. What about sleeper tight ends?
Man, I've been looking for sleeper tight.
Wait, no, you didn't give us a sleeper receiver.
Oh, let me go way off the board for sleeper wide receiver. Somebody to look into. If you guys haven't run your analytics or taken a look at them yet, I'm going way off the grid. John Giles, Jiles, out of West Florida, is who I'm working on this last 2 days. So I'm working on a scouting report. I'll be done with it in another day or two. I can send it to you, or I can send you a link.
Where can people read your scouting reports?
They're all at fantasyfootballmetrics.com, ffmetrics.com. They're all there. All the rankings of the players for the NFL draft, and then obviously for Dynasty rookie draft as well. So, but check out John Giles. Check out his tape that's on YouTube, and it's a guy I'm interested to see if he's actually going to get drafted and he's going to be the out of nowhere wide receiver from this draft.
Does he happen to be the son of Brian Giles, outfielder for the Pirates?
No.
Okay.
Different spelling.
What about tight end, sleeper tight end?
Man, this is the worst tight end draft. As good as the wide receiver class is, this tight end class after Bowers is pretty shaky. I like Jared Wiley, but I'm not gonna bet heavy money on it or make a hot take statement that he's better than Travis Kelce or anything. I'm keeping tabs on where Jared Wiley's going to wind up. I think from a fantasy perspective, he's a sleeper pass receiver from the tight end class.
It's great. Yeah, the tight end 2 positions wide open this year. Could be Jared Wiley. So you're saying circle him. All right. I'll get you out of here, man. Give us a bold prediction. You've already been bold. You've been very bold. Your position on this quarterback class has singed my eyebrows, and I love it so much. But you have to go back into your bold bag one more time, RC. Give us a prediction.
Man, it was going to be the Will Levis take, but he made me spill the beans on that too early.
I didn't make you do anything.
You forced it out of me. I mean, you all but browbeat me out of it.
You are volunteering all these takes. You're not doing anything under duress.
Veering off. Man, I was going to go with the Will Levis. How about Curtis Samuel pushing to be a wide receiver 1 in PPR, at least in the early stages of the season, giving you value to use or trade from all the Buffalo happenings. And my other way out there bold prediction that should not be a cut for a hot take. It's just a throwaway take. Well, 2 of them. I think the Colts are going to trade up to get Marvin Harrison somehow, some way. And I think Tyson Bagent is going to give Caleb Williams a bit of a battle in the preseason, and they're going to hate each other, and possibly fists are going to fly, and they're going to have to move Tyson Bagent or something because Caleb Williams and him don't get along, and Tyson Bagent's going to be gunning for that job, and Caleb Williams is not going to like it, and their personalities are going to clash, and we're going to hear things about Bagent and Williams having friction.
RC the Oracle. From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.